I'm Andrew Butt, I'm Managing Director of Enable, and this is Paul Murphy, who's Finance Director of DCS. And what we're going to be talking about this morning is management of rebate agreements, and we've basically got 4 case studies. The first 3 are very brief, just to try and paint a picture of different examples rather than focusing entirely on one example, and I'll talk through those fairly quickly. And then I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to talk us through DCS and a much more detailed case study there. So in terms of managing rebates and supplier contracts, what we've found is that this can be very complex. Deals can vary enormously between different suppliers and different customers, and often the number of combinations and permutations of kind of product-specific deals and supplier-specific and customer-specific can really be quite enormous. So often what we find is that these deals don't fit into normal business systems. You can't take Sage or SAP or Oracle and just stick these deals in, because they are quite unique to each individual company. What we therefore find is companies tend to be very good at negotiating deals and creating, really quite good terms, but once those are signed off, they can end up being filed away, and the maximum benefit of those deals is often not claimed. Or we see situations where perhaps Excel spreadsheets are put together, and you've got kind of quite manual systems that people create to try and manage these deals, and they're very homemade, yet they're managing often millions or tens of millions of pounds worth of revenue. So that's really quite a scary situation. And in every example we've looked at, we've saved our clients tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds. And Paul will be talking about what that's been like for DCS. I think part of this is also, as I've put here, the gap between finance and purchasing. So once again, purchasing negotiate the contracts, give them to finance, and is there potentially a gap between the two? So a couple of case studies for you. One company we've worked very closely with is Landmark, and Landmark are a buying group in the grocery sector, turning over nearly £2 billion a year, and their function really is to make sure there's a very high level of buying power in the grocery sector. Rebates are claimed from suppliers on a regular basis. Overriders are also claimed at the end of the year, and these are then distributed to the members. And so you can imagine that the rebate and overrider system is a core part of the reason that they exist, and providing visibility to their members of what rebates are due, and also looking at what-if scenarios to say, if you just bought 10 more cases of this one product, then actually we'd get into the next band and we'd get this huge rebate coming back. So really helping people to plan and forecast their buying to maximise deals was very important. So in Landmark, there's about 30 members and probably about 60 kind of depots in total, and they all now use an online system which basically allows them to model their deals, pull in purchase data from the members, and then work out what needs to be claimed, invoice suppliers, and of course the very important part of distributing that monies back to the individual members. So that's certainly an example of a buying group. Another example of a buying group in a very different sector is Excel Vets. And again, the situation here is that there's a number of manufacturers that supply to a number of wholesalers that then supply many members. Okay? And members will buy the same products from different wholesalers. And so having a kind of view on the total amount of products that have been purchased across the different wholesalers is important, because manufacturers are actually paying rebates. Okay, so again, pulling the information together and then being able to bill the manufacturers and distribute that money back to the members was very important. And in this case, there's about 116 separate practices that all buy. And so having a central system has provided them with a lot of insight in terms of group purchasing, and has also helped them rationalise their buying. Third example here is, again, we're trying to paint a picture of different types of companies. So Wolseley in the UK has many hundreds of suppliers and contracts with those suppliers on an annual basis. Because the deals were very complex, you've got lots of different units of measure. So you've got some deals based on tonnage, some based on square meters, some are value-based, some are volume-based, some are value and volume-based, and it just wouldn't fit into the business system. So what we basically put in place was a system to help them create deals internally, get them signed off by internal management, then get them signed off by the supplier, and then pull in purchase data, and that is compared to all the contracts that have been modelled, and invoices get raised. And if their buying director said, right, I want to know all the rebate we've earned in the last 3 months for heating spares, it took them about a week to go through 200 spreadsheets and run lots of macros and work it out. So I think the point I'm stressing is that these deals are unique and complex, and you know, there are not many systems that you can buy off the shelf that really do the job. So we're now going to move on to DCS and go through a much more detailed story in terms of what happened there. And I'll hand over to Paul to just talk us through DCS and what the issues were.
Yeah, hi. I'm the FD at DCS. We've been trading for 17 years. These are the divisions within the company. DCS Central is the division that uses the rebate system. We're located in Stratford-on-Avon. We have 2 large sheds almost, and our turnover is 126 million per annum. That's been our sales growth since 1994, which is quite impressive, really. And those are our key suppliers. Of our 126 million, 70 million comes from 133 suppliers, of which these represent 82%. Our key relationships are with our suppliers. Those are our customers. We supply the wholesale, convenience retail and forecourt markets. And what happens, the salespeople negotiate deals with the customers on behalf of the manufacturers. We get the manufacturers' support to actually offer deals, 2 for 1, that sort of thing, percentage reductions in selling prices. And the value of our retros in 2010 was 13.6 million, which is actually more than our gross profit. And what was critical was capturing every single penny of that 13.6 million. We realised that using spreadsheets just wasn't capturing everything, and we did an exercise which went back 6 months, and we found £300,000 had not been invoiced. Prior to that, obviously, more. So we knew we had to have a system that captured everything. With changes in staff who understand all the deals, things get missed, and it's frightening to think of how much over the years that we may have lost. This system, we now believe, captures absolutely everything. It does rely, of course, on the deals being input at the very beginning. Once they're in there, the system takes over, and not only does it avoid the rekeying of a massive amount of data, it just accelerates the whole process of invoicing the suppliers.
So just to kind of talk through what this might look like, and we won't dwell too much on kind of software, because we're trying to talk about business benefits here. So just kind of talking through very briefly, what the system in DCS now offers is a deal library where all of the deals are input. Deals are complex, so some, for example, will be supplier specific and customer specific and product specific. So it's kind of, if we buy certain products from a supplier and sell them to a certain customer, we then get a specific deal, and we therefore need to pull in both purchase data and sales data to work out what rebates we need to claim. As Paul said, these deals are being set up centrally by a buying team, but lots of people in the business need to be aware of them. So having a deal library which is searchable, and you can see here we can search by suppliers, search by products, and various other criteria, is important. What we then have, if I've just kind of run a search here, is a list of deals that meet the criteria. So one of these, for example, is Procter & Gamble, all customers excluding macro, and it's about dental products, for example, and there's a date range in here as well, so I can open that up. And what this then shows me is the parameters for that deal. And we've got various parameters we can set up on the left-hand side, and then what we can do is we can exclude certain customers or include certain customers, for example, And we can then also include or exclude certain products as well, and the same for supplier. So it's a very, very easy process to set up these deals. And what that then results in is literally invoices being raised automatically. This system actually tells DCS which statements to generate. They press a button and it literally says there are no statements to generate, or yeah, there are 400 and here they are. And what it also does is gives you all the backup data.
And what it did immediately was accelerated the whole process, and it brought forward around £1 million worth of extra cash into our account, which annually we're talking, you know, £30,000–40,000 worth of interest benefit. So it kind of paid for itself very, very quickly.
Another important function of this system is actually looking at true cost and margin analysis, because obviously you've got your buy price, but then depending on who you're selling to, the true cost will vary. So in this case, the top line here, we're talking about a customer of Macro, a supplier of Procter & Gamble, a specific product, which I think in this case is a hair gel. It's saying the buy price is £10.44 and the sell price is £11.08, but the true cost is £9.83, and you can then drill down from there and see exactly how that's comprised. But this is really like a margin alert system, which is highly useful, because, of course, it's also possible to, with the complexity of all these deals, to have some loss-making products if we're not careful.
No, they were just redeployed within the company. It's now one person that deals with it. Literally, there's a schedule that just tells her when to press the button, and it's done. It's that simple.
It is templated, so typically there's the ability to roll on and just extend the same deal. There's also the ability to model next year's deal based on this year's deal, so you can just tweak it. And there's quite a lot of reporting which pulls together kind of what you've actually achieved in the last 2 or 3 years and suggests what you might want to put together. So it's certainly not a case of starting from scratch, although you might sometimes. You can. It has got various controls in place, you know, version controls to make sure, obviously, all the historic data is maintained correctly. But there is a way to make changes to a deal throughout the year.
We could.
Yes.
We do that with a lot of our systems. I don't think we've gone that far yet, because there's been no requirement, but you certainly could make it accessible passwords and the rest for people.
Yes. Well, certainly for other clients, we have suppliers actually logging in and signing off deals online, and we've achieved that with many hundreds of suppliers for a single client, which is a challenge, because in a way the technology is quite easy, of course, but getting people to use it is more difficult. But we've got suppliers logging in. I can't think of examples where customers log in. But this technology is not just about managing supplier contracts, it could be used to manage customer contracts as well. So I was a prospect the other day who has got very complex contracts with customers, and you know, so it's not about suppliers, and they need to know when and how to bill customers. Working partnership typically, so typically we're pulling in purchase and/or sales data from Oracle or from SAP. If SAP or Oracle provides the ability for you to model all your contracts accurately and does all this for you, then arguably there's no need for us to do this. But what we find typically, and again I'm sure Oracle and SAP could walk in and say that, you know, they've got various modules and so on, but typically our clients find that they have got core modules of these ERP systems and it doesn't do that, so we have to integrate with it. Well, I think it was taking about 2 weeks after the month end.
It was 2 weeks, but if someone goes on holiday for a week, it can be 3 weeks. You know, it was up to a month before the invoice was actually sent out. Now it's literally a routine that's run daily. And as I looked in yesterday, there was absolutely nothing to be invoiced. It was all done. We were right up to date, and that's critical.
You can. I mean, I think that links into another response I was going to give to this gentleman at the back. Because obviously one of the challenges of changing a deal halfway through the year is where you've got, say, retrospective deals, of course, then you can make changes which would impact that. And the same with what you're saying, that if an invoice is disputed, that can change the whole profile, can't it, of the deal? So the answer is yes, it can. That is supported technically, and there are decisions to be made when we implement this to work with you to say, well, how do you want that to deal with things like, you know, the retrospective payback? Should that be taken out completely? And from a forecasting point of view, for example, I guess that would be taken out of the forecast completely, that disputed set of invoices, but then it could be put back in again, and it could come back later in the year.
Well, I mean, what we've got, we have 6-week promotions. We've got about 7 different 6-week promotions, and the products that are supported by the manufacturers change from promotion period to promotion period. So it's an ongoing thing, which is why a system like that is actually needed.
Okay, so really to kind of summarise, we've talked a bit about DCS and how they have gone from kind of spreadsheets to an electronic system, and how that's kind of paid for itself. In monetary terms, I'd say probably within 6 months at the worst, but in addition to that, there's been many other benefits as well. So now we're just going to talk a little bit about what Enable does and how it goes about doing that. Enable's been around now for about 11 years, and we are essentially a software development company. And the way that we position ourselves is that, once again, major ERP systems are great most of the time and are robust and scalable and certainly cover all the day-to-day run-of-the-mill processes. So arguably payroll and you know, raising purchase orders is quite standard across different businesses. But what we see is there are almost always gaps. And I know I'm regularly quoted at saying that I've probably met 1,000 CIOs over the last 10 years, and 3 of them have said that they've got wall-to-wall something and they've got no gaps, but the others have all kind of said they have got gaps. And as a result of those gaps, people tend to create spreadsheets and access databases and bits of paper and all sorts of things as these homegrown systems, which are arguably okay when you're managing a few records and you've got 2 users, but for things like this, where you know you are claiming lots of money and it's a critical process, it's just not fit for purpose. So the dilemma then is, do you carry on in Excel? Do you migrate to your ERP system? And is that really a sledgehammer to crack a nut, which we often see that it is? So what we do and the way we position our business is we create systems that integrate with the kind of ERP, but replace the spreadsheets. And what we found over the years is that this is a very common area. So kind of we started out being a software developer, but we found that this is a very common area, and we've probably solved solutions for about a dozen companies in this space. And every one has got differences. There's nuances in every single one, which is quite interesting. So we have our core platform, but it is typically kind of configured to suit each customer. In terms of our kind of setup, we have a permanent UK team. We don't offshore or outsource. We don't use freelancers, and that does ensure a high level of consistency and quality control. As I say, we're all UK-based. And we do have an end-to-end methodology. So what that really looks like is first of all a discovery phase, where we'll come in and look at what you're doing at the moment, look at your spreadsheets, look at your kind of access or whatever they might be type systems, and understand the underlying process. And we're really keen to get under the skin of that and understand not just what you do, but also why you do what you do. You know, our guys really want to understand why. We have been called reassuringly pedantic by one customer, but we do think that by asking the right questions at the early stages, it makes the rest of the project quite straightforward. And this discovery piece is our kind of speculative thing that we do. So it's really free advice, if you like, and at the end of that, we make recommendations. If you then like what you see, and it looks like we can solve the problem and it will be timely and cost-effective, we then go on to a much more detailed, defined stage, and that really ends with a functional specification to say this is exactly what the system will do in business terms. It's not a technical thing, it's very kind of business-focused. And that may involve getting different people in a room. So it might be getting different types of buyers in a room, obviously getting finance people in the room, identifying who the stakeholders are for the project, and making sure we understand all the requirements. Once we've done that, we then implement the system. We have our standard platform, and we will tend to develop on that. And we also often provide an ongoing management service. So in the case of DCS and many of the clients, we actually host the system. We use leading hosting companies like Rackspace, for example, and we provide a single point of contact to you. Yes, I mean, I'm thinking of what ports company we're dealing with, and they have very complex agreements with customers on all the charges they make for different services at ports across the UK and probably overseas as well. So, and again, it does vary enormously from one customer to another. And so being able to bill them, I think that they were reliant on one guy who was the expert, and like Paul said earlier, when this guy was on holiday, they couldn't bill anyone. I spoke about the cash flow benefits, and their response was they had plenty of cash, so they weren't very turned on by cash flow benefits. But certainly the dependency on one person wasn't very clever. Yeah, no, we see that in many cases. I think in DCS it's all invoiced, isn't it?
It's all invoiced. Because the customer has no account with the supplier, it all has to come through us. Even though they may have negotiated deals between them, we have to make sure that actually happens. With some suppliers, we can actually raise the invoice and deduct it from what we owe them. Others, we have to pay them the original invoices and wait for them to pay us our rebate invoices.
Yeah. But we have certainly got other customers where, in many cases, they don't raise invoices, where they're just receiving money and receipting that, and that is receipted in the system in those cases, because often they've got product sourcing managers or buyers who are setting up these deals, and they say, this is great, we're going to earn £1 million from this deal, but in reality, there can be discrepancies where the supplier hasn't understood it in the same way that they've understood it, and it will. It will, yeah. So I think what I was going on to say was the buyer can actually see the cash coming in and say, well, yeah, on paper we should be able to claim £1 million, or they should pay us £1 million, but we've received half of that, and it's now halfway through the year, or that kind of thing. Absolutely, yes, yeah. So what we tend to have is we'll have a year or a deal start forecast to say at the start of the deals we think we're going to bring in this, we're going to spend this much money and bring in this much rebate, and then we have an actual so far, then we have a revised forecast based on actual so far and revised forecast, and then of course we have last year, so we compare all that together. And it's great to be able to say at the beginning of the year for an individual buyer or for a supplier or for a business division to say, we said our forecast for the year would be this purchases and this rebate, and we're now halfway through the year and we've achieved something else and we've got yet another revised forecast.